They told you Atlantis was just a myth. They told you Lemuria never existed. But what if both were real, and their secrets are still buried inside you? Long before Egypt raised its pyramids, before Sumer etched its first tablets, two lost continents thrived. Atlantis, a superpower of fire crystals and impossible technology. Lemuria, a matriarchal paradise where humans and star beings lived in harmony. And then destruction. Floods, fire, war in the heavens. Entire civilizations erased. Yet fragments survive. Myths across continents repeat the same details. Ruins under the sea whisper of forgotten cities. Even our DNA may carry the scars of those cataclysms. What if history has been deliberately silenced? And what if remembering it could change everything we know about who we are? Tonight, we are not following the history you learned in school. We are stepping into the shadows of forbidden knowledge. Did you know that whispers of lost continents still echo in the silence of our world? Long before satellites mapped the oceans and science declared its verdicts, humanity carried an unshakable memory of vast lands swallowed by the sea, of shining cities drowned beneath waves, of civilizations that rose higher than we dare imagine and then vanished in cataclysm. Among these, two names return like haunting refrains: Atlantis and Lemuria. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato gave us the first detailed account of Atlantis. In his dialogues, Timaeus and Critias, written nearly 2,400 years ago, he spoke of a mighty island empire beyond the Pillars of Hercules. Atlantis was a naval power, a civilization of immense wealth and technology, yet undone by its arrogance and corruption. Within a single day and night of misfortune, Plato said, the island sank beneath the waves of the Atlantic Ocean. For many, this was a metaphor, a moral tale cloaked in myth. But for others, it was a fragment of memory, preserved in the human story. On the other side of the world, whispers of Lemuria, a great landmass said to have stretched across the Pacific or Indian Oceans, echo through the traditions of South India, Madagascar, and Polynesia. Lemuria, or Kumari Kandam, as Tamil texts call it, was a paradise of wisdom, harmony, and spiritual unity. Its disappearance beneath rising seas was remembered not as fable, but as history. When the last ice age ended, oceans rose hundreds of feet, swallowing coastal plains and entire homelands. Was Lemuria one of them? Even in South America, legends recall sunken lands. The chronicles of Akakor, said to be preserved by Amazonian tribes, speak of wars between gods, of fire and water unleashed, and of continents lost to time. These tales may seem fantastical, but they mirror each other with uncanny similarity. Cultures separated by oceans and millennia repeat the same song, that once there were lands of wonder, destroyed in a cataclysm that scarred human memory forever. Why do these stories persist? Why do they return again and again across every corner of the earth? It is easy to dismiss them as coincidence, as myth-making born of human imagination. Floods are common after all, and every culture explains its past with symbolic stories. Yet there is a deeper resonance here. The flood myths of Mesopotamia, the Popol Vuh of the Maya, the Mahabharata of India, the Aboriginal Dreamtime, and the legends of the Pacific all share more than simple motifs. They carry precise echoes, descriptions of advanced beings, shining cities, crystal technologies, and wars of the gods. Too specific, some argue, to be coincidence. In the 20th century, the American psychic Edgar Cayce spoke often of Atlantis. He claimed its people harnessed the energy of crystals, what he called the Firestone, to power their crafts, heal their bodies, and sustain their industries. He warned that Atlantis was destroyed not by chance but by its misuse of power, and he predicted that evidence of this lost world would reappear near the Bahamas, in the waters of Bimini. In 1968, divers indeed discovered a strange underwater formation there, known today as the Bimini Road. To believers, This was Casey's prophecy fulfilled, a trace of Atlantis revealed. But Atlantis is not alone. Lemuria, too, holds its silent evidence. In 2013, geologists studying the floor of the Indian Ocean discovered traces of a microcontinent they named Mauritia, a fragment of ancient crust hidden beneath volcanic islands. Its existence confirmed that entire landmasses could indeed vanish beneath waves, leaving only whispers in myth and mineral. For those who believed in Lemuria, this was proof that memory may hide geological truth. Still, the question remains: are these tales of Atlantis and Lemuria merely stories? Or do they preserve something far stranger, a record of contact with powers beyond Earth? Some traditions suggest that Atlantis and Lemuria were not only advanced human civilizations, but homes to beings from the stars. Legends tell of the Anunnaki, the sky gods of Mesopotamia, who shaped humankind by manipulating DNA. Others speak of the Pleiadians, Arcturians and Syrians, star-born visitors who guided and seeded humanity. Could Atlantis and Lemuria have been the earthly stages where these cosmic dramas unfolded? Imagine the world of 12,000 years ago. Vast ice sheets still cloaked the poles, sea levels lay hundreds of feet lower than today, and coastlines stretched far beyond their modern bounds. Where today there is only ocean, once there were fertile plains and perhaps glittering cities. The melting of the ice sheets was sudden and catastrophic, triggered by cometary impacts or rapid climate shifts. The Younger Dryas cataclysm. Seas rose, rivers burst, and entire homelands were drowned. Could this event have been the very flood remembered in every myth, the destruction that swallowed Atlantis and Lemuria alike? The story of these lost continents is not only about geology or archaeology, it is about identity. If humanity once walked among gods, if we once built civilizations guided by star races, then we are not merely children of Earth. We are heirs to a cosmic legacy, fragments of a story that spans galaxies. As we step into these hidden truths, the goal is not to prove or to disprove, it is to listen. To listen to the whispers of myth, the echoes carved in stone, the silent memory woven into our very DNA. For myths may be more than imagination. They may be fossils of memory, fragments of a truth too vast to vanish. Atlantis and Lemuria call to us not as fairy tales or idle fantasies, but as questions. Questions about who we are, where we come from, and whether the civilization we live in is truly the first, or merely the latest in a cycle far older than we dare believe. These stories endure because they are not only about the past, they are warnings etched into the human soul. They tell us that civilizations rise, but pride and power can undo them. They remind us that harmony with nature is fragile and that imbalance always carries a price. They suggest that what has been lost may yet be found, not only in the ruins beneath the sea, but within ourselves. From here, the path unfolds into the shadows of forgotten history, into the cosmic struggles of gods and men, into the mysteries of Atlantis and Lemuria. Beneath the surface of myths about Atlantis and Lemuria lies an even deeper question, one that stretches far beyond the Earth itself. If these continents were real, if their people were advanced, where did such knowledge come from? Was it born from human ingenuity alone, or seeded from the stars? Across cultures, the stories converge. In Mesopotamia, the Sumerians spoke of the Anunnaki, beings who descended from the heavens, shaping humanity through divine instruction and genetic craft. In the Vedic hymns of India, the gods are described as luminous sky travelers, wielding flying chariots called Vimanas. Among the Dogon of West Africa, oral traditions recall teachers from the star Sirius, who came to Earth to share knowledge of creation, agriculture, and the mysteries of the cosmos. Even in the Americas, legends of skyborn gods, feathered serpents, and shining beings echo the same refrain. Humanity was not alone. These are not isolated tales. They form a mosaic, fragments of a story where Earth was once a meeting ground of civilizations not entirely human. And in this mosaic, two names stand apart: Lemuria and Atlantis. They were said to be the earthly stages where the dramas of the gods unfolded, where cosmic seeds were planted in human soil. According to esoteric traditions, the first to arrive were the Lyrans, a race of tall, radiant beings from the Lyra constellation. They embodied harmony, carrying within them the memory of the original 12-strand DNA, a blueprint of unity and wholeness. From Lyra, many colonists spread across the stars. To Vega, the Pleiades, Arcturus, and Sirius, scattering fragments of that original design. But they were not alone. The Draconians, reptilian warriors from the depths of space, rose as their counterparts and rivals. Where the Lyrans cultivated balance, the Draconians thrived on domination and conquest. Their clashes tore across galaxies, leaving scars in the evolutionary path of countless species. When the wars reached their height, entire colonies were annihilated. Some traditions claim that fragments of this cosmic war rained upon Earth itself, shaping the earlier cycles of human history. From the ashes of these conflicts, new lineages emerged. The Pleiadians, often described as luminous, ethereal beings with a feminine essence, brought teachings of compassion and spiritual connection. The Arcturians, guardians of sacred knowledge, introduced vibrational technologies, ways of harmonizing energy and matter. The Sirians, linked to the bright star Sirius B, embodied both masculine and feminine polarities, teaching strength, honor, and the mysteries of water. Together with the Anunnaki, these seeding races wove their genetics into the evolving hominids of Earth. Imagine this moment, not as myth, but as memory. Early primates, Neanderthals, Denisovans, Homo erectus, wandered Earth's forests and plains. Then contact came. Some were modified, their DNA adjusted, their minds awakened. Failures occurred. Experimental models that could not hold the spark, cast aside into extinction. But eventually the design stabilized. Out of this great experiment arose what some call the Adamic human, resilient, creative, bearing within it fragments of 12-star lineages. This narrative, radical though it may seem, is echoed in traditions across the globe. In the Book of Enoch, fallen angels descend to earth and alter the children of men. In Polynesian lore, gods intermarry with mortals, producing hybrid lineages. In the myths of Central America, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, is both a teacher and a genetic architect. Different names, different symbols, yet the same underlying theme. Humanity was shaped not only by Earth, but by the stars. What makes Atlantis and Lemuria central to this story is that they were not just civilizations, they were experiments. Lemuria, the cradle of matriarchal balance, embodied service to others, a society rooted in harmony with nature and spiritual resonance. Atlantis, the forge of patriarchal ambition, embodied service to self, driven by logic, hierarchy, and technological mastery. Together they formed a polarity, a mirror of the cosmic conflict between unity and domination. Some traditions suggest that this polarity was no accident. The founders, higher dimensional custodians of order, allowed these experiments to unfold on Earth as part of a greater plan, to integrate the fragmented aspects of soul and DNA caused by ancient galactic wars. Lemuria and Atlantis became the living laboratories of balance, the proving grounds of humanity's destiny. Yet the seeds carried a burden. The wars of Lyra, the shadow of Draco, the manipulations of the Anunnaki, all these echoes were woven into the genetic fabric of humankind. Every person in this telling is a tapestry of star lineages, carrying not only wisdom but also wounds, unresolved traumas from battles fought long before Earth was born. And here lies the hidden truth. To understand Atlantis and Lemuria is not only to study lost continents. It is to recognize that our very bodies, our DNA, are living records of cosmic history. Within us, the seeds of the stars still whisper. When we gaze into the night sky, perhaps we are not looking outward at distant suns. Perhaps we are looking inward, into memory, into origins, into the fragments of who we truly are. Beneath the fiery glow of a setting sun, long before the world we know, there stretched a vast land across the Pacific. It was not mapped by satellites, nor remembered in official history, yet in the whispers of myth it still breathes. Lemuria. Imagine a continent where mountains rose like guardians, their snow-lit crowns piercing the sky, while valleys blossomed with ferns taller than men. Rivers wound through emerald forests, singing as they carved paths of silver light. The air shimmered with salt and blossoms, carrying both the tang of the ocean and the sweetness of flowers that no longer exist. This was a world where nature and civilization did not stand apart, but sang together in harmony. At the heart of Lemuria lay Kailasa, a sanctuary of crystal temples nested among mist-clad peaks. These temples were not built in the way we know stone and mortar. They were grown, living structures of quartz, amethyst, and diamond that pulsed with harmonic frequencies. To enter one was to step into music, for the very walls resonated like instruments tuned to the heartbeat of the earth. Lemurians believed that sound was not mere vibration, but a doorway to higher consciousness. Their chants, carried across mountains, were said to stabilize the planet's energy grids, anchoring balance between worlds. The Lemurians themselves were unlike us, though still deeply human. Descriptions passed down through esoteric traditions speak of people tall and luminous, their eyes radiant with a light that seemed to hold the memory of the stars. Their robes flowed like water, woven from fibers that shimmered with living energy. They moved with grace, not hurried, as if each step was a hymn offered to the earth itself. Life in Lemuria was a seamless tapestry of nature, spirit, and community. Homes were not dead walls but living sanctuaries, entwined with vines and flowering quartz, breathing with the pulse of the land. Coral gardens thrived beneath the ocean surface, shimmering like underwater cities that reflected the sun in waves of iridescent light. Dolphins leapt in greeting, and whales carried songs that wove into the Lemurians' meditations. Nothing was separate, all was one. The society itself was matriarchal, though not in domination, but in nurturance. Feminine principles guided its rhythm: intuition, cooperation, and the honoring of cycles. Elders, often women, carried wisdom not as authority, but as stewardship, ensuring that decisions aligned with the greater harmony of the earth. Children were not seen as possessions of families, but as gifts of the community, raised together in shared learning. Every life was a thread in the whole. Their knowledge was subtle but profound. The Lemurians understood the crystalline matrix of the earth, that crystals were not only stones, but conduits of memory and energy. They used them for healing, communication, and attunement with the stars. Some traditions even claim Lemurians could communicate telepathically, speaking not through words but through heart resonance. To stand among them was to feel one's own thoughts softened, as if bathed in a quiet light. And yet, Lemuria was not without challenge. Its people knew that theirs was an experiment, a fragment of the greater cosmic story. They carried within them the seed lines of many star races: Lyran, Pleiadian, Sirian, each with its gifts, each with its shadows. The purpose of Lemuria was to weave these fragments into harmony. It was not always easy. At times, differences in polarity created friction, but the society as a whole was designed to resolve, to heal, to integrate. Legends say that Lemuria endured for hundreds of thousands of years. Its people rarely sought conquest or expansion, for they saw themselves as guardians of the earth. Their focus was inward, on consciousness, on maintaining balance between realms. For this reason, Lemuria became a spiritual heart of the planet, a frequency anchor that stabilized not only Earth, but the very grids of the cosmos. But paradise is never eternal. Even within the harmony of Lemuria, seeds of discord lingered. Other races, the Anunnaki, the Draconians, the Orion factions, looked upon Earth with interest. The Lemurians, with their matriarchal principles, represented a way of being that threatened the dominion of those who thrived on control. And so, the stage was set. The paradise of Lemuria would one day be tested, its harmony confronted by forces that sought power, not balance. For now, though, let us linger in its light. Let us imagine the crystalline temples glowing under the silver moon, the sound of water cascading down mountains, the laughter of children playing with orbs of living light. In these visions, perhaps we glimpse not only a lost world, but a reflection of what humanity still longs for. A civilization rooted in harmony with the earth, in unity with each other, in remembrance of the stars. The story of Lemuria is not only about what was lost, it is also about what remains within us. The memory of balance, the whisper of feminine wisdom, the call to live not above nature but as part of it. And though the oceans may have claimed its land, the essence of Lemuria still hums in the crystals of the earth, still lingers in the dreams of those who listen. Across the vast ocean from Lemuria, another civilization began to rise. If Lemuria was a hymn to harmony and nature, Atlantis was an ode to order, ambition, and power. Where Lemuria seemed to flow with the rhythms of the earth, Atlantis was built upon geometry. Circles within circles, symmetry so precise that even the gods might pause to marvel. Imagine a city shaped like a crown upon the waters of the Atlantic. Its capital lay in concentric rings of land and sea, 3 wide circles of earth separated by glittering canals, connected by bridges that arched like veins of marble. At the very centre rose the grand temple of Poseidon, its spires carved from the rare metal orichalcum, glowing as if forged from molten gold. At sunrise, the temple shimmered with such brilliance that sailors miles away thought they beheld a second sun. The streets of Atlantis sparkled with polished stone. Vehicles driven by crystalline energy hummed silently as they glided over smooth causeways. Bridges carried traders and pilgrims across canals where ships from distant lands unloaded goods of every kind. Spices, metals, fabrics, and tools that hinted at commerce stretching across the known world and perhaps beyond. Markets thrived with voices from many tongues, for Atlantis was not isolated, but a hub of global exchange. At night, towers of crystal pulsed with light, illuminating the city as if another dawn had risen. These crystals were not decorative. They were the beating heart of Atlantean technology. Suspended in towers and harnessed in engines, they drew energy from the earth itself, channeling currents of fire, water, and air. This energy powered everything: flight, agriculture, healing chambers, and weapons of devastating potential. Unlike Lemuria, where society emphasized collective unity, Atlantis was organized around hierarchy and governance. At its head stood kings, 10 of them, each ruling a district of the continent, their lineage said to descend from the union of gods and mortals. The Atlanteans believed their authority divine, ordained by Poseidon himself. Beneath the kings were councils of priests and scientists who blended spiritual knowledge with engineering, seeking mastery not only over the earth, but over the very forces of creation. To walk among the Atlanteans was to encounter a people tall, strong, and resplendent. Their attire fused metal with silk, ornament with practicality. Gold circlets gleamed on their brows, symbols of rank and lineage. Some accounts describe Atlanteans of many hues: red, white, black, brown, and yellow, coexisting in a vast melting pot of races. Giants, too, were said to walk their streets, descendants of earlier unions between star beings and humankind. Central to their civilization was a mysterious device Casey called the Firestone, a great crystal that concentrated solar and cosmic energies. Through prisms and domes, it emitted beams capable of powering vehicles across land, sea, and sky. In healing chambers, its rays were tuned to regenerate tissues, extending lifespans and strengthening the body. At its height, the firestone was seen as a gift of the gods, a wellspring of abundance. But in its misuse lay the seeds of ruin. Atlantis thrived not only on technology, but on conquest. Unlike Lemuria's inward gaze, Atlantis looked outward. Its fleet sailed across oceans, establishing colonies, gathering tribute, and extending influence. To the Atlantean mind, civilization was not a circle, but a pyramid. Order imposed from above, progress measured in power. They sought to dominate, to expand, to bring all tribes of Earth beneath their crown. And yet their achievements cannot be dismissed as mere tyranny. The Atlanteans were brilliant architects, engineers, and explorers. They mapped the heavens with precision, charted ocean currents, and constructed monuments aligned with stars. Some traditions claim that remnants of their knowledge endure in Egypt's pyramids, in Stonehenge, in mysterious megaliths scattered across the globe. Even in ruin, their legacy whispers through stone. The contrast with Lemuria could not be sharper. Where Lemuria honoured the feminine principle, intuition, cooperation, communion with nature, Atlantis exalted the masculine, logic, ambition, and control. One sought balance with the earth, the other sought mastery over it. These were not simply cultural differences, but reflections of deeper cosmic polarities, echoing the ancient conflicts of Lyrans and Draconians, unity and domination, service to others and service to self. For a time, the two continents coexisted, like yin and yang across the oceans. Lemuria radiated harmony from the Pacific. Atlantis radiated power from the Atlantic, but tension brewed. The Atlanteans grew restless with their neighbours' refusal to join their dominion. The Lemurians resisted, insisting that each people should evolve in its own rhythm. The stage was set for conflict, though the storm had not yet broken. Even now, as we peer through the mists of legend, Atlantis beckons us with paradox. It was at once a marvel and a warning, a civilization that reached extraordinary heights but carried within it the shadow of its fall. In its brilliance, we glimpse our own ambitions, the lure of technology, the dream of mastery, the pursuit of knowledge without restraint. In its downfall, we glimpse our own perils, imbalance, arrogance, and the forgetting of spirit. The Atlanteans believed their power eternal. They built their cities upon foundations of crystal and gold, convinced that no wave could touch them. But history, even hidden history, teaches otherwise. For every empire that rises, a day comes when the sea remembers. And so the story of Atlantis begins not in its destruction but in its glory. A city of rings and towers, of firestones and fleets, of kings who ruled as gods. It rose from the ocean like a crown of the earth, yet crowns, however bright, are heavy, and the brighter the flame, the longer its shadow. In the silence that follows the birth of civilizations, there is always a shadow, the memory of worlds already lost. Before Atlantis glittered with its concentric rings, before Lemuria sang in harmony with the ocean, another planet had fallen. Its name was Maldek. Maldek, once a jewel of the solar system, circled the sun between Mars and Jupiter. Legends describe it as a thriving world, a nexus of trade and culture, inhabited by advanced beings who had harnessed the energies of crystal and star alike. But ambition led to war. Weapons of unimaginable force, nuclear echoes of the cosmic battles of Lyra and Draco, ripped the planet apart. Where Maldek once shimmered, only the asteroid belt now remains, a silent graveyard of shattered stone. Among the few who escaped this cataclysm was one remembered in legend as Hanuman, not the monkey god of India as we know him today, but a Maldekian survivor, his name carried as a symbol of courage, loyalty, and endurance. His ship drifted across space, a refugee vessel scarred by fire, its hull groaning as it entered Earth's atmosphere. Alone, carrying the grief of a world annihilated, Hanuman descended. Below him stretched a vision unlike the scorched ruins he had fled. Emerald forests, sapphire seas, mountains veiled in snow, rivers like veins of silver. Earth was not Maldek, yet it promised sanctuary. And it was here, among the crystalline valleys of Lemuria, that Hanuman's journey would find purpose. The Lemurians received him not with suspicion, but with compassion. In their culture, every being was a fragment of the greater whole, and refugees carried the sacred role of messengers, bearers of stories from other stars. Amara, a priestess of the Emerald Covenant, greeted him beneath the glowing trees of Kailasa. Her robe shimmered with iridescent patterns, her eyes reflecting both sorrow and welcome. "You have travelled far," she said, her voice like the hum of crystal. "Your world is gone, but your journey is not. Come, for here you will find not only refuge but calling." Hanuman followed her into the heart of Lemuria, where cities of living crystal spiraled upward like frozen song. Waterfalls cascaded down cliffs, scattering rainbows into mist. Children played beside orbs of light, their laughter mingling with the low chants of elders gathered around great crystalline trees. Everywhere he turned, the land breathed, alive, a sanctuary unlike anything he had known. And yet, as he walked among them, Hanuman's heart ached. He saw in every child's laughter the ghost of his daughter, in every embrace, the absence of his wife. Grief is a wound that no paradise can erase, but in Lemuria, grief was not a burden to be hidden. It was a thread woven into the fabric of healing. Within the Temple of the Emerald Crystal, Hanuman underwent initiation. The crystal itself rose like a mountain of light, radiating a pulse that seemed to vibrate with the heartbeat of the earth. Around it gathered the guardians of the Emerald Covenant, robed in shimmering silver, their faces serene. They explained that their mission was not merely earthly but cosmic, to weave together the fragments of shattered DNA, to restore the unity lost in galactic wars, to prepare humanity for ascension beyond duality. Hanuman was given a staff of emerald light, its energy merging with his own. In that moment, he was no longer only a refugee. He became a guardian, a protector of balance, a bridge between the memory of Maldek and the promise of Earth. In the years that followed, Hanuman studied the sacred arts of Lemuria. He learned to channel energy through crystals, to heal not only bodies but the distortions of soul. He meditated under the guidance of the elders, unlocking memories of Maldek and transmuting them into wisdom. He came to see that his exile was not punishment, but purpose, to carry forward the lessons of a fallen world into the hope of a new one. But Hanuman's story is not only about refuge, it is about the universal journey of humanity itself. We too are refugees, survivors of forgotten cataclysms, carriers of memories we cannot name, fragments of stories lost to fire and flood. Like Hanuman, we walk through grief and longing, searching for a home not just in land, but in meaning. The myth of Hanuman, as remembered in India, leaping oceans, carrying mountains, serving Rama with unwavering devotion, may be a transformed echo of this cosmic tale. For myths are not lies. They are translations, metaphors of truths too vast for words. Perhaps the Hanuman who carried a mountain of herbs is a reflection of the Hanuman who carried the burden of a destroyed planet, bringing healing to Earth. And what of the Emerald Covenant? It too whispers in our myths. In the lore of one, in the teachings of the Melchizedeks, in the legends of 12 tribes and 12 crystals, the same theme emerges. That humanity is a tapestry woven from many star lineages, a living library of cosmic DNA. Hanuman's initiation is our own, a reminder that we are not only survivors, but participants in a greater restoration. Yet shadows linger. Even as Hanuman walked the glowing bridges of Lemuria, other eyes watched. The Anunnaki, the Draconians, the Orion factions, all had interest in Earth. To them, Lemuria was not only a sanctuary, but a threat, a matriarchal civilization aligned with balance in a universe often ruled by domination. In time, conflict would come, and once again, Hanuman, like all of Lemuria, would face the storm of cosmic war. But for now, let us remain with him in that moment of arrival. Picture him standing before the emerald crystal, the light of earth merging with the memory of Maldek. He is weary, scarred, grieving, yet in his hands glows a staff of emerald fire, a promise that even in exile, even in loss, the soul may find new purpose. Hanuman's story is not only his, it is ours. It tells us that though worlds fall and civilizations drown, the seed of spirit endures. It tells us that refuge is never only escape, but transformation, and it reminds us that within the fragments of our own DNA lies a covenant waiting to be remembered, the covenant of light, of unity, of the stars themselves. At the heart of Lemuria, deep within the crystalline temples of Kailasa, there pulsed a radiance older than any city, older even than the continents themselves. It was called the Emerald Crystal, and around it formed the order known as the Emerald Covenant. The Lemurians believed this covenant was not a human creation, but a divine agreement, seeded long before Earth itself was formed. It was a pact between the founders, those higher dimensional beings who shepherded the evolution of worlds, and the guardians of life across the cosmos. Its purpose was simple yet profound: to preserve balance, to safeguard the original design of creation, and to heal the fractures left by endless wars among the stars. When Hanuman stood before the Emerald Crystal, the guardians of the covenant spoke of this mission. They explained that humanity was not an accident of evolution, but a living library, woven from the genetic codes of 12 star lineages. Each lineage carried wisdom and gifts, but also wounds. The task of Earth was to integrate them, to bring the fragments back into unity. These 12 lineages became encoded in what esoteric traditions call the 12-strand DNA template. In modern science, we see only 2 strands, coiled in their elegant helix. But according to the Lemurians, the others remain dormant, sealed off by cosmic trauma and manipulation. They are not gone. They wait, sleeping, for humanity to remember. The Covenant's guardians taught that every soul carries within it fragments of earlier lives, lives not only on Earth but on other worlds: Lyra, Sirius, Pleiades, Arcturus, Orion. Some of these fragments are luminous, filled with wisdom. Others are scarred, distorted by wars, betrayals, and forced genetic manipulations. To be human is to hold all of this: the light and the shadow, the wholeness and the fracture. The mission of the Emerald Covenant was to collect and integrate these lost pieces, to unify Lemurian soul fragments tied to the feminine principle of the second dimension, and Atlantean fragments bound to the masculine principle of the third, to weave them together until duality itself could be transcended, and humanity could return to the original design, a being of 12 active DNA strands, luminous and whole, capable of communion with the higher dimensions once more. To symbolize this, initiates of the Covenant were given emerald staffs, crystals that resonated not only with the Earth, but with the great central sun, the source of all light in the universe. When held, these staffs pulsed in rhythm with the bearer's heart, as if reminding them that the Covenant was not outside of them but within. The Lemurians saw themselves as custodians of this sacred task. Their society was built not around conquest or wealth, but around nurturing the delicate threads of balance. Healers worked with crystals to harmonize body and soul. Teachers guided children to listen to the songs of rivers and stars. Elders wove myths not as stories for entertainment, but as maps to remembrance, encoding cosmic history into symbols that could survive even when memory failed. And yet, the Covenant was not confined to Lemuria. Across the ocean, in Atlantis, echoes of it also existed. Some Atlanteans, aligned with the law of one, honoured the Covenant and sought to use their technologies in harmony with spirit. But others, the faction later called the Sons of Belial, grew impatient with balance. They saw the covenant not as protection, but as restriction, a barrier to power. For them, the Firestone was not a gift to be honoured, but a weapon to be wielded. This divergence planted the seeds of the great conflict to come. Lemuria embodied service to others, Atlantis increasingly turned to service to self. The Emerald Covenant, meant to unite, became a point of division. Some upheld it as humanity's lifeline, others rejected it as a chain. Still, the covenant endured, written not only in crystals but in the very fabric of humanity. It whispered through DNA, through the myth of 12 tribes, through the stories of 12 apostles, 12 gates, 12 stones of heaven. Everywhere in sacred lore, the pattern of 12 returns, a memory of the covenant that shaped us. To the Lemurians, this was not coincidence. It was the cosmic signature of unity, hidden in plain sight. Every time a story spoke of 12, it was pointing back to the same truth, that we are fragments yearning for wholeness, seeds scattered across galaxies, destined to be gathered again. Hanuman came to understand this in his studies. Each meditation, each healing, each vision reminded him that his own grief was not separate from the greater story. His loss was not meaningless. It was a thread in the tapestry of remembrance. In serving the covenant, he was not only healing others, he was healing himself. The Emerald Covenant was never about perfection. It was about integration, to gather the broken, to honour the wounded, to transform even exile into belonging. It taught that nothing was wasted, that even the darkest fragment could be transmuted into light. But as the Lemurians worked quietly in their crystalline sanctuaries, forces beyond their shores stirred. The Anunnaki, ambitious and divided, sought to control humanity's evolution. The Draconians, ever hungry for dominance, saw Earth as a prize to be conquered. And in Atlantis, power began to outweigh wisdom. The covenant would soon be tested in ways none could foresee. For now, though, let us pause in the glow of the emerald crystal, where the covenant's promise still vibrates. That within each of us, beneath the scars of history and the fractures of DNA, lies the memory of wholeness. That we are not broken beyond repair. That the seeds of the stars still sing within us, waiting to be awakened. And perhaps, as the Lemurians believed, to remember this is the first step toward becoming whole again. Around 50,000 years ago, the harmony of Lemuria met its darkest test. What had been a paradise of crystalline temples and matriarchal wisdom became the stage of one of Earth's earliest recorded genocides, remembered in esoteric traditions as the Lemurian Holocaust. The seeds of tragedy had been sown long before. For while Lemuria sought balance, other forces circled Earth with very different intentions. The Draconians, reptilian overlords from distant constellations, looked upon Lemuria not as sanctuary but as obstacle. Their empire thrived on domination, feeding on fear, on lust, on the fragmentation of other species. To them, Lemuria's devotion to unity, to the Emerald Covenant, was intolerable. The Orion group, aligned with the Draconians, plotted in secret. They infiltrated the underground passages that connected continents, seeking to destabilize the very foundation of the planet. According to hidden histories, the Lemurians discovered this intrusion too late. In their attempts to seal the tunnels, they triggered a chain reaction. Earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and implosions of the Earth's crust. The Pacific continent shuddered. Mountains fell. Oceans rose. What followed was not a single cataclysm, but a cascade of devastation. Volcanoes belched fire into the skies, turning day into night. Tsunamis swept across coastlines, swallowing cities whole. Valleys split open into sinkholes, dragging forests and temples into abyss. Millions perished in days. Entire regions of Lemuria were reduced to smoking ruins, their crystalline sanctuaries shattered, their harmony broken by the roar of collapsing earth. Those who survived fled underground. In caverns deep beneath mountains, they lit their crystals and began the arduous task of survival. They became caretakers of Earth's wounded body, working in secret to repair broken portals, to stabilize planetary grids, to prevent total collapse. But survival came at a cost. The memory of paradise was now scarred by horror. The Lemurian Holocaust was not only physical destruction, it was spiritual warfare. Draconian forces and their Anunnaki allies orchestrated genetic manipulations designed to fracture the human template. Programs of forced breeding and hybridization sowed trauma into bloodlines, embedding distortions into DNA itself. What had been a matriarchal, nature-aligned society was torn apart. Women were abducted, their sacred genetic codes stolen. Men were enslaved or executed. The invaders understood that by breaking the feminine principle, they could weaken the covenant that protected Earth. Legends speak of the Ayayani massacre, when high-ranking female council members of Lemuria were betrayed by Thoth and taken to Nibiru. Sacred crystal plates, encoded with the Emerald Order's knowledge, were stolen and rewritten as the so-called Emerald Tablets. What had been wisdom for healing became tools for control. This betrayal deepened the wound of the divine feminine, a trauma that echoes even now in humanity's struggles with self-worth, sexuality, and disconnection from spirit. For survivors, the devastation was unbearable. Families torn apart, communities annihilated, the ocean itself swallowing their homeland. Some sought vengeance, forming resistance groups against their oppressors. Others retreated further into silence, vowing to protect what fragments of Lemuria remained, even if only in secret. Esoteric teachings say that more than 60 million Lemurians perished in this Holocaust. Only a fraction survived, perhaps 10,000, carrying with them fragments of knowledge, crystalline technologies, and memories encoded into their very DNA. These survivors became the seed of later myths, of underground cities, of shining beings guarding mountains, of refugees who wandered until they found hidden sanctuaries. But the impact was not limited to Lemuria. The Earth itself was scarred. The implosion of the Pacific crust destabilized the planet's magnetic field. The axis shifted. Oceans surged into new patterns. Climate collapsed. This was not only the fall of a continent, it was a planetary cataclysm. To the Lemurians, the Holocaust was more than disaster. It was initiation. A brutal tearing away of innocence, a descent into shadow that forced them to confront the deepest wounds of existence. For if humanity was to heal the fractures of cosmic wars, it could not remain sheltered in paradise. It had to descend into suffering, to bear the scars, to transform them. Even today, echoes of the Holocaust linger, in the myths of flood and fire, in the inexplicable trauma woven into human memory, in the hidden fear of water, of drowning, of loss that so many carry without knowing why. These may be not only personal fears, but ancestral ones, fragments of Lemuria still grieving through us. And yet, within this tragedy, the covenant endured. The survivors, guided by the Emerald Order, encoded their memory into crystals buried deep within Earth. They planted their knowledge in myths, in songs, in DNA. They trusted that one day humanity would awaken and remember, not only the pain, but the wisdom. The Lemurian Holocaust reminds us that no civilization, however advanced, is beyond destruction. It warns that harmony, if not protected, can be shattered by forces of domination. But it also whispers a deeper truth, that even in devastation, the seed of light can endure. That survival is not merely living through, but carrying forward what is sacred. The survivors would not vanish. They would rebuild in hidden sanctuaries, beneath mountains and oceans, waiting for the day their memory could rise again. And across the ocean, in Atlantis, the tide of history turned. For while Lemuria mourned, Atlantis grew stronger, more ambitious, more restless. The balance of the world shifted. A clash was coming, one that would decide not only the fate of two continents, but the destiny of humanity itself. As Lemuria reeled from its Holocaust, Atlantis stood in ascendance. Its fleets roamed the oceans, its temples glowed with crystalline fire, and its kings sat in council with ambitions that stretched beyond the horizon. For a time, the two continents coexisted, one humbled and hidden, the other resplendent and proud, but harmony between opposites rarely lasts. By 22,000 years ago, tension had hardened into division. The Lemurians, guardians of the Emerald Covenant, believed that every culture should follow its own rhythm, free from domination. Atlantis disagreed. With its fleets and firestone technology, it sought to bring all tribes, all lands under its dominion. Unity through order, the Atlanteans claimed. Unity through harmony, the Lemurians replied. Two visions of humanity, irreconcilable, facing each other across the sea. At first, the conflict was political. Ambassadors crossed oceans demanding allegiance. Lemuria refused. Atlantis insisted. What began as words soon became war. Atlantean technology was unlike anything known today. Powered by crystals that harnessed the Earth's own electromagnetic field, their ships could traverse air and water alike. Sleek vessels glided across the seas without sails, while firestone-driven crafts lifted into the sky, glowing with energy beams invisible to the human eye. Their weapons channeled concentrated solar heat, able to burn through mountains, to redirect rivers, to shatter forests in seconds. Lemuria, though less militarized, was not defenseless. Its crystalline temples doubled as energy grids, amplifying sound into destructive force, channeling the resonance of the earth itself. Lemurian healers became warriors, using vibrational weapons to disorient Atlantean machines, collapsing their resonance fields. Yet in raw firepower, Lemuria was outmatched. The war tore across the planet. Volcanoes erupted as Atlantean beams pierced the crust. Earthquakes shook as Lemurian countermeasures destabilized tectonic lines. Storms raged unnaturally, summoned not by weather, but by weapons. To those who lived through it, it must have seemed as though the gods themselves had turned the earth into a battlefield. But beneath the war of weapons lay a deeper battle, a war for the human soul. Atlantean factions, especially the sons of Belial, sought to control genetic templates, bending humanity into slaves for mining, for labor, for service to their empire. The Lemurians fought to preserve the freedom of human evolution, to protect the original design of the Emerald Covenant. In every skirmish, every siege, this question echoed: would humanity belong to itself or to its creators? The conflict escalated until the planet itself could no longer bear the strain. Around 10,468 BC, according to esoteric timelines, the final blows were struck. Atlantean weapons unleashed torrents of solar energy, destabilizing the magnetic field. Nuclear echoes tore across continents. The Earth's axis shifted, poles tilted, oceans surged. Floods drowned cities. Mountains sank. Entire coastlines were swallowed. Plato, writing millennia later, recorded that in a single day and night of misfortune, Atlantis was destroyed. But Atlantis was not alone. Lemuria, already scarred, suffered annihilation in turn. The war that had begun with words ended in silence. Both continents swallowed by water, their people scattered into myth. The cost was unthinkable. More than 60 million Lemurians were said to have perished. Atlantis, with all its splendor, was reduced to ruins beneath the sea. Survivors fled, some into the mountains of the Andes, some into the deserts of Egypt, some into the hidden caverns beneath Mount Shasta. The memory of two great civilizations became whispers, encoded into DNA, disguised as myth, waiting for rediscovery. But even in destruction, their legacies diverged. The Lemurians, those who endured, chose secrecy. They rebuilt in hidden sanctuaries, nurturing their wisdom in silence, waiting for a future when humanity might be ready to listen. The Atlanteans, scattered, carried fragments of their science into new lands. Some became builders of pyramids, megaliths, and stone circles, echoes of a lost golden age. Others became tyrants, perpetuating cycles of control. Their brilliance survived, but so did their shadow. In the end, the war of Atlantis and Lemuria was not about land or power alone. It was about polarity, the eternal tension between service to self and service to others, between ambition and harmony, between domination and balance. These were not merely civilizations, but archetypes, mirrors of the choices humanity still faces. Even today, the echoes remain. In myths of floods and cataclysms, in ruins that defy explanation, in our fascination with lost worlds. Perhaps we remember because we were there. Perhaps the trauma of Lemuria and Atlantis still hums in our collective memory, resurfacing as dreams, as fears, as longings we cannot explain. The wars of Atlantis remind us that technology without wisdom leads to ruin. The fall of Lemuria warns that harmony, if not defended, can be shattered. Together their stories form a lesson that humanity's future depends not only on what we can build, but on how we choose to live. And so, the seas closed over their shining cities, the temples grew silent, the firestones dimmed. All that remained were fragments, myths scattered like shells upon distant shores. Yet from those fragments, survivors carried seeds, seeds of memory, seeds of light, seeds of civilizations that might rise again. When the oceans swallowed Lemuria and the fires of Atlantis dimmed, the earth fell into silence. Survivors wandered across continents reshaped by flood and quake. Many perished, carried away by hunger, disease, or despair, yet a small remnant endured. The last children of Lemuria, carrying within them memories of harmony, the teachings of the Emerald Covenant, and a determination that their lineage would not vanish from the earth. These survivors journeyed across the Pacific, guided by visions, by stars, and by the subtle pull of crystalline currents beneath the earth's surface. Their path led them northward, across what would one day be the Americas, until they came to a mountain unlike any other. Its slopes were shrouded in mist, its forests alive with whispers, its peak crowned in snow that glowed under moonlight. To the Lemurians, it was no ordinary mountain. It was alive. It pulsed with energy, as if the earth itself had placed a beacon there. This was Mount Shasta. Legends tell that beneath its rocky flanks, the Lemurians carved a refuge, not with hammers and chisels, but with crystal technology that shaped stone as easily as clay. They called their hidden city Telos, meaning communion with spirit. Carved into 5 vast levels, Telos became both sanctuary and temple, a place where Lemuria lived on in secret. The entrance was veiled from ordinary eyes. Travelers who strayed too close spoke of hearing a deep humming beneath the ground, of vibrations that made their bones tremble, of lights flickering between the trees though no fire burned. Some even reported tall figures robed in white, their presence serene, their eyes luminous. Those who followed found themselves led to caves that vanished into silence, as if the mountain itself swallowed the path. Inside Telos, the air shimmered with soft radiance. Light emanated from the walls themselves, reflected and amplified by crystalline structures embedded in the stone. Gardens flourished in underground caverns, nourished by streams that glowed faintly with bioluminescence. Waterfalls cascaded into pools that never stagnated, their currents circulating with engineered precision. The Lemurians had recreated the paradise they had lost, weaving together nature and technology into seamless unity. Each level of the city served a purpose. The first was dedicated to agriculture, vast terraces of fruits and grains illuminated by crystal light that mimicked the sun. The second contained dwellings, living structures grown from quartz and stone, entwined with vines that pulsed faintly with energy. The third was devoted to education and healing, its chambers filled with crystalline instruments that resonated with sound frequencies capable of restoring balance to body and spirit. The fourth level housed records and archives, vaults of knowledge preserved from Lemuria, star maps, histories, and crystalline data plates. And at the fifth and deepest level lay the Temple of the Heart, where a massive crystal pulsed like a beating heart, synchronized with the resonance of the earth itself. The people of Telos were tall, graceful, draped in flowing white garments. They lived far longer than surface dwellers, sustained by their technologies and the harmony of their society. They moved slowly, with intention, as if every gesture was part of a sacred dance. Their speech was gentle, but many preferred telepathic communion, sharing thoughts and feelings directly. To encounter them, if the stories are true, was to feel one's own mind softened, one's heart calmed, as though standing in the presence of a forgotten peace. Telos was not isolation for its own sake. The Lemurians saw themselves as guardians, protectors of balance in a world that had nearly been destroyed. They watched over Earth's grids, repairing portals, harmonizing magnetic fields, guiding humanity from afar. Yet they chose secrecy, for the surface world had fallen into darkness. Wars raged, empires rose and fell, and the memory of Lemuria and Atlantis was buried beneath myth. To reveal themselves then would have invited persecution, misunderstanding, or worse, exploitation of their crystal technologies by those who still sought domination. Still, glimpses of Telos have surfaced through the centuries. Native American tribes of the region speak of the mountain as sacred, a place where the spirit world touches the earth. Elders recount encounters with tall, luminous beings who emerged from hidden caves, offering guidance or healing. In 1904, a prospector named J.C. Brown claimed to have found a cavern system beneath Mount Shasta filled with golden tablets, statues, and the remains of giant beings. He organized an expedition to reveal it to the world, but vanished mysteriously before it began. In modern times, hikers have reported glowing orbs near the slopes, strange voices in the wind, and footprints that disappear into solid rock. Some speak of being guided away from danger by unseen presences. Others claim to have glimpsed entire cities of light shimmering within the mountain before fading into mist. Whether these are visions, hallucinations, or genuine encounters, they keep alive the legend of Telos. For those who believe, Telos is not fantasy, but a living remnant of Lemuria, a city where ancient wisdom thrives, where survivors continue the work of the Emerald Covenant. They are said to use crystal healing chambers, capable of regenerating tissues and aligning the soul. They communicate across the planet with crystalline devices that respond to thought, not to wires or machines. They travel within the city on levitating platforms, guided by intention rather than force. To them, these are not miracles but natural technologies, aligned with the laws of harmony rather than conquest. The significance of Telos is not only that it may exist, but what it represents. It is the possibility that not all was lost, that when Lemuria sank, its wisdom was not extinguished, but preserved, hidden, waiting for the day when humanity might be ready to receive it again. It is a reminder that survival is not always loud or visible. Sometimes it is quiet, hidden beneath mountains, encoded in crystals, whispered in myths. And perhaps that is why Mount Shasta continues to draw seekers, mystics, and wanderers from across the world. They feel something in its presence, an energy, a call, a stirring of memory. Perhaps they are answering not only curiosity, but resonance, a subtle recognition that part of their soul remembers, that once, long ago, we lived in harmony beneath crystal light, and that part of us still longs to return. Telos may remain hidden, but the legend of its existence reminds us that even in the darkest ruins of history, hope survives. That even when oceans drown continents, light can endure beneath the mountain. The story of Lemuria did not end beneath the slopes of Mount Shasta. Like ripples spreading across an ocean, its memory carried far beyond the Pacific, surfacing in myths, legends, and even in the stones of distant lands. For if a civilization once spanned half the globe, would not its echoes be heard across continents? In the south of India, the Tamil people preserve a legend as old as their language itself. They speak of Kumari Kandam, a vast kingdom that stretched between India, Sri Lanka, and Madagascar. It was said to be ruled by the Pandyan kings, a cradle of poetry, astronomy, and philosophy. Here, humanity flourished before a great flood swallowed the land, leaving only fragments of its people to carry the memory. In Tamil texts, Kumari Kandam is not myth, but history, a record of cities and dynasties lost to the rising seas. To the people of that land, Lemuria is not a word invented by European scholars, but a truth rooted in their blood. Across the ocean in Madagascar, elders recall the same memory, of lands to the east that vanished beneath waves, of migrations forced by catastrophe, of ancestors who once belonged to a greater whole. Polynesian voyagers, too, speak of a homeland that sank, a paradise from which their people spread across the Pacific. Even in the Andes, oral traditions remember shining lands that disappeared, leaving their survivors to build cities in mountains closer to the sky. For centuries, scholars dismissed these tales as coincidence. In the 19th century, European naturalists searching for an explanation of how lemurs existed both in India and Madagascar proposed a land bridge in the Indian Ocean. They called it Lemuria. Though the scientific model was soon abandoned in favour of plate tectonics, the name lingered, fusing with older myths. Lemuria moved from hypothesis into legend, from geology into mystery. But sometimes mystery circles back to science. In 2013, geologists studying volcanic islands in the Indian Ocean discovered something astonishing. Buried beneath the lava flows of Mauritius lay ancient zircon crystals, fragments far older than the surrounding rock. Their age suggested they belonged not to islands, but to a submerged continent, torn apart tens of millions of years ago. Scientists named it Mauritia. Though unrelated to human civilization, Mauritia proved a possibility once mocked, that vast land masses can indeed vanish beneath the sea, leaving only whispers and shards. Is Mauritia Lemuria? Most geologists would say no, but to seekers of hidden history, its discovery is a reminder that myths often carry kernels of truth, that the Earth's surface is not fixed but ever-changing, that what was land can become ocean, and what is ocean may once have been land. The echoes do not end there. In Polynesia, chants recall Mu, a lost homeland beyond the horizon. In Hawaii, legends speak of a continent to the south that sank in fire and flood. In Africa, Dogon traditions preserve memories of beings from Sirius who guided their ancestors after a great catastrophe. In each story, a pattern emerges: civilizations destroyed, survivors scattered, wisdom hidden, waiting to be remembered. Even in the West, fragments appear. The Greek historian Diodorus wrote of islands beyond the Pillars of Hercules, fertile and vast. Early Christian writers hinted at lands destroyed by floods. Medieval maps carried phantom continents, their outlines sketched like fading memories of lands sailors could no longer find. Why does humanity tell the same story, over and over, across continents and millennia? Perhaps because it is more than story. Perhaps it is memory, encoded not only in words, but in our very DNA. Modern science shows that trauma can be inherited epigenetically, carried in the body long after the event has passed. Could it be that the trauma of Lemuria and Atlantis lingers in us still, surfacing as myths of flood, exile, and longing? To the Lemurian survivors beneath Mount Shasta, to the Tamil poets of Kumari Kandam, to the islanders of Polynesia, the answer was simple. We remember because we lived it. What we call myths are not inventions but fragments, shattered mirrors of a past too vast to hold whole. And so, the echoes across continents remind us that history is not confined to textbooks. It breathes in song, in legend, in the stones beneath our feet. Perhaps one day, when the oceans yield their secrets, we will find more than zircons and theories. Perhaps we will find ruins, roads, and temples waiting in silence beneath the waves, proof that the memories of our ancestors were never wrong. Until then, the echoes continue. Each myth, each discovery, each whisper of a lost land adds another piece to the puzzle. And though we may never reconstruct the whole, the pattern is clear. Humanity has lost worlds before, and in remembering them, we may yet learn how not to lose our own. The tales of Atlantis and Lemuria are not only about continents drowned by the sea, they are mirrors held up to humanity across time, reflecting not just what once was, but what always is. Beneath the layers of myth and memory, they embody two archetypal paths, two ways of being in the world, one rooted in harmony, the other in control, one devoted to service to others, the other to service to self. Lemuria was the embodiment of balance with nature, guided by the feminine principle of intuition, nurturing, and collective unity. Its people lived as guardians, not conquerors. They honored cycles of the earth, of the stars, of birth and death. Their covenant was not about domination but remembrance, to heal the fractures of cosmic history, to bring scattered fragments into wholeness. Atlantis, by contrast, was the embodiment of ambition, aligned with the masculine principle of logic, hierarchy, and power. It was brilliant, a civilization that soared to heights we can barely imagine today. Yet brilliance untempered by humility becomes peril. Atlantis sought to impose order, to extend dominion, to bend the earth and her peoples to its vision, and in doing so, it sowed the seeds of its destruction. These two civilizations were not simply neighbors across oceans, they were polarities, reflections of a cosmic drama older than Earth itself. The wars of Lyra, the dominion of Draco, the exile of Maldek, all these echoes converged on Earth, finding new form in Lemuria and Atlantis. Their rise and fall were not accidents, but enactments of a deeper story. The struggle between power and wisdom, between separation and unity, between ego and spirit. The lesson of Lemuria is that harmony is possible. For hundreds of thousands of years, its people thrived without conquest, cultivating inner technologies of consciousness, crystals, and sound. They remind us that civilization need not be measured by weapons or monuments, but by the depth of connection between people, planet, and cosmos. Yet their fall warns us that harmony is fragile. It must be defended, or it can be shattered by forces that exploit division. The lesson of Atlantis is more complex. It shows us the heights to which ambition can soar, glittering cities, mastery of energy, exploration across oceans and skies. But it also shows us the shadow of such ambition, the temptation to see knowledge as ownership, power as entitlement, technology as substitute for wisdom. Atlantis reminds us that progress without balance is a blade without a hilt. It cuts even the hand that wields it. Together, Lemuria and Atlantis teach a truth humanity still wrestles with, that civilization is not defined by what we build, but by how we balance. Service to others and service to self are not merely philosophies. They are energies, currents that flow through societies and souls alike. When one dominates the other, imbalance follows. When balance is forgotten, collapse is inevitable. These lessons are not abstract. They echo through our world today. We, too, live in an age of dazzling technology, of ambition that reaches to the stars, of power that shapes climate and genome alike. And we, too, struggle with the shadow of forgetting our connection to nature, to each other, to spirit. The story of Atlantis feels less like distant myth than like a warning written into our future. Yet within that warning lies hope. For if Atlantis embodies the dangers of imbalance, Lemuria embodies the memory of harmony. And though Lemuria sank, its essence was not lost. It lingers in crystals, in myths, in the whispers of Mount Shasta, in the chants of Tamil poets, in the DNA of humanity itself. It calls us to remember that another way is possible. Esoteric traditions tell us that humanity carries both legacies. Within us are Lemurian fragments, the longing for unity, the wisdom of the feminine, the memory of living as one with Earth. Within us are Atlantian fragments, the brilliance of invention, the drive to build, the hunger for mastery. To deny either is to remain incomplete. To integrate both is to become whole. The Emerald Covenant, whispered in Lemuria and honoured by some Atlanteans, framed this integration as humanity's sacred task. Not to choose one over the other, but to reconcile them. To blend the intuition of the feminine with the reason of the masculine. To unite service to self and service to others in a higher balance, where the individual and the collective thrive together. This is not easy. The scars of history run deep. Trauma fragments the soul. Programs of domination and manipulation linger even now, encoded in systems of control, in patterns of exploitation, in the very fears we inherit. But the Covenant teaches that healing is possible, that fragments can be gathered, wounds transmuted, balance restored. Perhaps this is why the myths endure. They are not only records of what once was, but roadmaps of what could be. They show us the extremes, the paradise of Lemuria, the glory and ruin of Atlantis, so that we may find a middle way. They remind us that the fate of civilizations is not written by destiny alone, but by the choices we make again and again in each cycle of history. And so, Atlantis and Lemuria stand as cosmic archetypes, eternal lessons encoded in story. They whisper that the past is not dead. It lives in us, in our ambitions and our longings, in our fears and our hopes. We are the heirs of both. The question is not whether Atlantis or Lemuria were real, but which of their paths we will walk. Balance is the key. That is the truth hidden in their fall. The seas may have swallowed Atlantis and Lemuria, but their stories did not drown. They flowed into myth, into legend, into the very marrow of human memory. For what is lost in stone may endure in spirit, and what is forgotten by history may yet be carried by the soul. Even now, whispers of these civilizations stir within us. They emerge in dreams of shining cities, in inexplicable longings for harmony, in the fascination with crystals, pyramids, and mysteries buried beneath the sea. They surface in myths that refuse to die, in religions that echo fragments of cosmic lore, in the endless human search for origins among the stars. Perhaps these are not fantasies. Perhaps they are memories, faint, fragmented, but real. Science tells us that DNA is a library, a record of all we have inherited. Esoteric traditions say it is more, a cosmic archive, encoding not only biology but history, not only ancestry but destiny. Within its spirals may lie the imprints of the 12-star lineages, the scars of galactic wars, the wisdom of the Emerald Covenant. Every heartbeat, every breath, may carry echoes of Atlantis and Lemuria. We are their legacy, walking in flesh. But what do we do with that legacy? That is the question. Atlantis warns us of brilliance without balance, of ambition without humility, of technology unmoored from spirit. Its story is not only about a continent lost, but about a temptation that still lives in us, the lure of power, the pride of thinking we are untouchable, the belief that progress alone can save us. Look around, the hum of machines, the glow of cities, the rising towers of our age. Do they not remind us of Atlantis? And do we not feel, too, the fragility of it all? Lemuria offers another path. It reminds us of what it means to live in harmony with the earth, to listen to the rhythms of nature, to honour the feminine principle of care, intuition, and community. Its story tells us that peace is possible, that societies can thrive without domination, that wisdom can be as valuable as invention, and though Lemuria fell, its essence survives. In the practices of indigenous peoples, in the songs of healers, in the subtle pull many feel toward crystals, meditation, and connection with the earth. In truth, part of us still remembers. To inherit both Atlantis and Lemuria is to live with paradox. We are both creators and destroyers, builders of wonders and carriers of scars. But paradox is not curse. It is invitation, the invitation to integrate, to reconcile the fragments, to become whole. Esoteric teachings say that humanity's task is to awaken the dormant strands of DNA, to reassemble the scattered soul fragments of Lemuria and Atlantis, to lift the seals placed upon us after cataclysm. This awakening is not about magic powers or instant transcendence. It is about remembering who we are, children of Earth, heirs of the stars, beings of balance. It is about healing the trauma carried across generations, transforming the wounds of genocide and war into wisdom that guides us forward. And so when we speak of Atlantis and Lemuria, we are not only telling old stories, we are speaking of ourselves, of the choices we face today. Will we repeat Atlantis pursuing power until it destroys us? Or will we remember Lemuria, cultivating harmony that can sustain us? Or perhaps will we do what neither could fully achieve, to weave the two together, balancing brilliance with humility, power with compassion, self with other? This is the spiral of history. Again and again, civilizations rise and fall. Again and again, we are given the chance to choose differently. The myths survive not to imprison us in nostalgia, but to remind us that the cycle can be broken. Maybe this is why seekers still climb Mount Shasta, why divers search beneath the Bahamas, why scholars sift through Tamil texts, why mystics gaze at the stars. We are searching for pieces of ourselves. We are searching for proof that we are more than what history tells us, that our origins are cosmic, our destiny expansive, our potential far beyond survival. Atlantis and Lemuria may have been continents, but they are also archetypes living within us. Atlantis is the mind that seeks, the hand that builds, the fire of ambition. Lemuria is the heart that listens, the soul that nurtures, the waters of compassion. Together, they form the human being, incomplete apart, whole only when reconciled. And perhaps if we can remember this, we can fulfill the Emerald Covenant's promise, to unify the fragments, to awaken the sleeping strands, to live as beings not divided, but whole. The legacy of Atlantis and Lemuria is not buried under the sea. It is here, in us, waiting to be remembered. So as you close your eyes tonight, let the whispers of those lost continents drift through you. Hear the hum of the firestone, the song of the crystal temples. See the shining rings of Atlantis, the mist-wrapped peaks of Lemuria. Feel the grief of their fall and the hope carried by their survivors. For their story is your story, their memory is your memory, their destiny is your choice. We are the children of Earth. We are the heirs of the stars. And though civilizations may fall, the light within us endures. Always. If these mysteries resonate with you, let your voice join ours. Share your thoughts and consider subscribing for more journeys into the forgotten past. Together, we can keep the memory alive.